Pull up a map, not a modern one, not Google Earth, a specific map drawn in 1513 by an Ottoman admiral named Piri Reis on a piece of gazelle skin in Constantinople. You can find it online. It's housed in the Topkapi Palace Museum in Istanbul. It's been photographed, digitized, and studied for over a century. It's not hidden. It's not classified. It's sitting in plain sight, one of the most famous cartographic documents in history, and it contains something that should be impossible. The map shows the western coast of Africa. It shows the eastern coast of South America. It shows islands in the Atlantic. These alone would make it a remarkable document for 1513, just 21 years after Columbus's first voyage, when European knowledge of the New World was still fragmentary and imprecise. But that's not what makes the Piri Reis map extraordinary. What makes it extraordinary is what appears at the bottom: a landmass extending south from the tip of South America, a coastline rendered in detail with bays and inlets and what appear to be rivers flowing to the sea, a coastline that doesn't match the known coast of South America as it continues south, a coastline that matches, with remarkable precision, the subglacial topography of Antarctica, the land beneath the ice, the coast as it would appear if the ice sheet that has covered Antarctica for thousands of years were removed. Antarctica wasn't officially discovered until 1820. It wasn't mapped in any detail until the 20th century. The subglacial topography, the actual shape of the land beneath the ice, wasn't determined until seismic surveys were conducted during the International Geophysical Year in 1957 and the decades that followed. And yet, here, on a map drawn 4 centuries before anyone claims to have seen Antarctica, and 4.5 centuries before anyone could have known what the land looked like under the ice, there it is, a coastline, in detail, matching measurements that wouldn't be taken for another 440 years. I need you to sit with that for a moment, because the implications are either extraordinary or there's an explanation that diffuses them, and I've spent a long time looking for the explanation that diffuses them. I haven't found one. This raises a simple but critical question. How? The official explanations exist. They've been offered by historians and cartographers for decades, and they fall into roughly 3 categories. First, coincidence. The southern landmass on the Piri Reis map isn't Antarctica at all. It's the coast of South America distorted and bent southward to fit the shape of the available parchment. Early cartographers routinely adjusted coastlines to fit their medium, and what looks like Antarctica is just Brazil wrapped around the bottom of the page. Second, speculation. Renaissance cartographers often included hypothetical southern landmasses on their maps, following the ancient Greek theory of terra australis incognita, an unknown southern land that was believed to exist as a counterbalance to the northern continents. Piri Reis was simply guessing, and the guess happened to be roughly right. Third, misidentification. The coastline represents the Falkland Islands, or the coast of Patagonia, extended and distorted through the normal errors of early cartography. Each of these explanations is plausible on the surface. Each addresses a specific feature of the map, and the deeper I looked, the more each of them collapsed under the weight of what the map actually shows. Start with the coincidence argument, the claim that the southern landmass is just South America bent to fit the parchment. Pull up the map and look at it. The Brazilian coast is already depicted on the map. It's clearly rendered, running north to south along the western Atlantic. The southern landmass begins where the South American coast ends and extends in a different direction, with different features, with a different character of coastline. It's not a continuation, it's a separate landmass. The bays don't match southern Brazil. The rivers don't match Patagonia. The features are distinct. Treating them as the same coastline bent for convenience requires you to ignore what the map actually depicts and substitute what the explanation needs it to depict. The speculation argument fares no better. Yes, Renaissance cartographers drew hypothetical southern continents, but those hypothetical continents were exactly that, hypothetical. They were depicted as vast, featureless landmasses, usually labeled Terra Australis Incognita, with no coastal detail, no bays, no rivers, no topographic features. They were placeholders, conceptual fillers. The southern landmass on the Piri Reis map is the opposite. It has specific features, detailed coastline, inlets that correspond to actual subglacial features. This isn't a cartographer drawing a vague southern continent because Greek theory said one should exist. This is a cartographer drawing a specific coastline as if he had source material that described it. And that brings us to Piri Reis himself, because the admiral didn't claim to have drawn the map from his own observations. He said so explicitly. In notes written on the map itself, Piri Reis describes the sources he compiled to create it. He references approximately 20 older maps, including maps captured from Spanish and Portuguese sailors, maps from the time of Alexander the Great, and maps from Arab cartographers. He was explicit that his map was a compilation, a synthesis of older sources, sources that, by his own account, predated not just his own era, but the era of European exploration itself. The silence was deafening when I started looking for those source maps, because they don't exist. Not one of the 20-odd source maps that Piri Reis described has survived. Not the Portuguese charts, not the maps from Alexander's era, not the Arab cartographic sources. All of them, every single one, has been lost, destroyed, vanished from the historical record. We have the compilation. We don't have what it was compiled from. The evidence of how the map was made has disappeared, leaving only the map itself, sitting in a Turkish museum, showing a coastline that nobody in 1513 should have been able to draw. As if they were following instructions they didn't fully understand. Now here's where the thread connects to something that made me put down my research and stare at the wall for a very long time, because the Piri Reis map isn't the only old map that shows things it shouldn't show. Pull up the Orontius Phineas map of 1531. It depicts Antarctica as a distinct continent, separated from South America, with mountain ranges, river systems, and a coastline that is partially free of ice. The map shows interior features, valleys, and what appear to be drainage patterns that correspond to subglacial topography confirmed by modern surveys. 1531. Nearly 3 centuries before the official discovery. Pull up the Philippe Boitsch map of 1737. It shows Antarctica divided into 2 land masses separated by a waterway. This was dismissed as fantasy for over 2 centuries. Then, during the International Geophysical Year, seismic surveys revealed that Antarctica is indeed 2 separate land masses beneath the ice sheet, East Antarctica and West Antarctica, separated by a low-lying region that would be a waterway if the ice were removed. Boitsch drew this in 1737. The geological confirmation came in 1958. Pull up the Haji Ahmed map of 1559. It shows the western coast of North America with a level of accuracy that European explorers wouldn't achieve for another 2 centuries. It shows a land bridge between Asia and North America in the region of the Bering Strait, a bridge that existed during the Ice Age when sea levels were lower, but that had been submerged for thousands of years by the time the map was drawn. Count the maps, seriously. Make a list. Piri Reis, 1513. Orontius Phineas, 1531. Mercator, 1538. Philippe Boitsch, 1737. Haji Ahmed, 1559, each drawn by a different cartographer in a different country in a different decade, each showing geographical features that the cartographer could not have known through contemporary exploration. each attributed, where sources are mentioned, to older maps that no longer survive, each depicting the world not as it appeared in the cartographer's own time, but as it appeared at some earlier period, a period when coastlines were different, when ice coverage was different, when the geography of the Earth was not what it is today. The pattern repeats with unsettling precision, and the pattern points in one direction, backward, towards source material of extraordinary accuracy that predates the cartographers who used it by centuries or millennia, material that described the Earth as it looked during or shortly after the last ice age, when Antarctica's coast was partially ice-free, when the Bering Land Bridge still connected Asia to North America, when the world's geography was fundamentally different from what Renaissance explorers encountered. The official explanation collapses here, because the standard historical narrative has no mechanism for producing this source material. No civilization recognized by mainstream history possessed the geographical knowledge, the navigational technology, or the cartographic skill to accurately survey Antarctica's coastline, with or without ice. No known culture before the modern era conducted the kind of comprehensive global mapping that these source maps would have required. The maps exist. The sources the cartographers cited existed. The knowledge encoded in them is accurate, and the official timeline of human civilization has no room for whoever produced that knowledge. The deeper I went, the more the maps started to look like surviving fragments of a cartographic tradition that predates recorded history. Not a single map. A tradition. A body of geographical knowledge compiled over time, copied, transmitted, degraded with each copying, but retaining enough accuracy that when Renaissance cartographers compiled their versions, the underlying data was still detectably correct. The signal survived the noise. The coastline was still recognizable after centuries or millennia of hand copying and cultural transmission. And here's what connects the maps to everything else I've been investigating. The knowledge in these maps isn't just geographical, it's technical. Accurately mapping a coastline requires more than just visiting it. It requires the ability to determine longitude, which European navigators couldn't do reliably until the development of the marine chronometer in the late 1700s. It requires the ability to project a three-dimensional surface onto a two-dimensional plane, a mathematical operation that implies sophisticated understanding of geometry and spherical trigonometry. It requires a framework, a system for collecting, recording, and transmitting geographical data across time and distance. Charles Hapgood, a professor of history at the University of New Hampshire, spent years studying these maps in the 1960s. His work, reviewed and endorsed in correspondence by Albert Einstein, concluded that the maps provided evidence of an advanced civilization that had mapped the Earth at a time when Antarctica was partially ice-free, a time estimated at roughly 6,000 to 12,000 years ago. Hapgood wasn't a mystic, he wasn't a conspiracy theorist. He was an academic whose work was taken seriously enough that Einstein wrote the foreword to his book, and his conclusions were essentially buried by an academic establishment that had no framework for accommodating them. Go read Hapgood's correspondence with Einstein. It's published. It's accessible. Einstein didn't endorse every detail of Hapgood's theory, but he found the evidence compelling enough to encourage the research and to lend his name to its publication. And then the book was published, and the academic world did what it does with evidence that contradicts the established narrative. It didn't refute. It ignored. Hapgood's work wasn't disproven. It was simply not discussed, not cited, not engaged with. Left to gather dust on the shelves of university libraries where curious students might occasionally find it and wonder why nobody ever followed up. The silence was deafening. I'm not telling you there was an advanced global civilization that mapped the world during the Ice Age. I'm telling you there are maps, physical, documented, authenticated maps, housed in museums, studied by cartographers, dated with reasonable certainty, that contain geographical information their makers should not have possessed. I'm telling you that these maps consistently depict the world as it appeared thousands of years before the maps were drawn. I'm telling you that multiple cartographers independently claimed to be working from older source material. I'm telling you that the older source material has vanished. And I'm telling you that the academic response to this body of evidence has been not investigation but avoidance. The Piri Reis map is sitting in Istanbul right now. You can look at it. You can see the coastline that matches subglacial Antarctica. You can read the admiral's own notes describing his sources. You can compare the map to modern surveys and see the correspondences for yourself. The evidence isn't hidden. It's cataloged, it's photographed, it's published. It's one of the most studied maps in the history of cartography. And the question it raises, the simple, devastating question of how a 1513 map shows a coastline that was last visible thousands of years before any known civilization could have surveyed it, that question remains unanswered. Not because it can't be answered, because the answer might require rewriting everything we think we know about how old human knowledge really is. The next time someone tells you that civilization began 5,000 years ago in Mesopotamia, ask them about the maps. Ask them how a Turkish admiral in 1513 drew a coastline that wouldn't be confirmed until 1957. Ask them where the source maps went. Ask them why Einstein found the evidence compelling enough to write a foreword, and the academic establishment found it threatening enough to ignore. Ask them what was known before we were told nothing was known. Once you see it, you can't unsee it.